Here I am, Thorkil Sohn from Denmark. I'm a former headmaster of a boarding school for teenagers, and I'll talk a little about Denmark, Greenland, and the United States. And please forgive me my poor English, it is not my native language. We live in troublesome times, and so it is important to face the truth and not lie and talk around it. And the truth is that the United States President Trump is threatening to take over Greenland, maybe even with force. And the lie is that we still refer to the United States as our closest friend and good ally, and even makes an agreement with the United States that they will establish military bases in Denmark itself, which means that the government cannot guarantee that Danish courts can convict American soldiers if they commit crimes, for instance rape or murder in Denmark, here in our own country. This explanation of pretending that the United States is our closest friend has similarities with the government's official cooperation policy in the first years of the German occupation during World War II, when the lie consisted of pretending that we were still an independent country. And just like now, it was of course easy to see through, and the reason why they are not speaking out, both during the occupation and now, is also easy to see. And it must be admitted completely understandable. The reason is in both cases, to put it bluntly, fear of offending the wolf. But here the comparison between then and now also ends. We are, after all, freer now than during the occupation, so we can better keep a good face to bad games. We just have to keep the wolf at bay until we are strong enough to confront it. And that is one of the reasons why Mette Frederiksen, the Danish Prime Minister, and her government, with large parts of the people as a cheering support group, are shouting, "Europe, Europe, Europe," in parentheses noted not only because of fear of the United States' failure and threats against Greenland, but also out of fear of Russia. Europe, and that most often means the European Union, must both save Greenland from being stolen by the United States and save us from Russia. In short, we must give the European Union more money, more military power, more political powers. Only in this way we can save our independence and our freedom. That is what the government says. I fully understand that we need a lifeboat. Unfortunately, the choice is wrong for two reasons. Firstly, the European Union, according to a fairly serious article in Kristi Dagblad, that is a Danish newspaper, the Christian Daily, an article in 2024 based on figures from the so-called Danish thinking tank Europe, already determines today that more than half of all Danish legislation is under European Union influence. And that is obviously not enough for the government. So the question is how much that power should be increased to 60%, 70%, or 80% of our legislation. In short, in order to preserve our freedom, we unfortunately have to give it up to the European Union. And secondly, why this choice is wrong, all experience shows that the European Union is not able to create much other than bureaucracy, complications, and reduced competitiveness. And there is no agreement at all on Russia, on Ukraine, defense, immigration, or much else. The European Union will end up collapsing, I predict, maybe soon, maybe later. That is what always happens when you want to govern very different countries and people from a center of power, and even govern in all details. The experience of history is that unions and empires perish, nations remain. And then we turn a little back to Greenland. Should we succeed in preventing the United States from taking over Greenland, it will only lead to Greenland declaring independence as soon as they feel they can. Not a bad word about it. They naturally have the right to decide for themselves, and I can understand that. The Danish Commonwealth, det danske rigsfællesskab, will never be equal. But undeniably, it leads to two other problems. Firstly, it is not sustainable from a Danish point of view that Greenland only needs Denmark as an emergency solution. And secondly, it will be a disaster for both Greenland and Denmark if the relationship ends in a divorce. There are so many connections, not only bad, we are focusing on the bad too much, but also so many good things to say about our connection, and there are so many personal and family connections too. 15,000 Greenlanders are living in Denmark, and many thousand Danish people are living in Greenland. So it will be a disaster. All of the if we divorce, all of the above leads to the solution that lies ahead. In not least troublesome times, we must seek together with our real friends a Nordic Commonwealth, where we, most importantly, first and foremost, and as soon as possible, conclude an armed neutrality agreement on a joint integrated defense and a joint conscription, which also includes sufficient forces in Greenland. Finland alone can provide 800,000 soldiers. The Nordic countries can therefore become an incredibly strong fortress, and I think a commonwealth that no other countries will have to fear. I wonder if a Finnish general should be put in charge of the whole operation. Such a defense agreement would make us much more independent of a fragile NATO and a divided European Union. And in such a commonwealth, the Faroe Islands and Greenland could be given their rightful place as equal nations, so that they can thrive permanently in a community that does not have to be constantly challenged. And it would be a community, a commonwealth of broadly countries where, I am sure of this, one could gradually agree on more things to be determined in common: foreign policy, embassies, currency, financial grants according to objective criteria from the currently rich to the currently poor, etc., and so on. That kind of consistent paradigm shift requires courageous statesmen in all the Nordic countries. I hope someone will start. Greenland, perhaps. The Faroe Islands, perhaps. They can win both full independence and equal community with closely related brotherly countries. And I'll say thank you if you have listened to this. Thank you.